So today we'll cover some new stuff, but focus on control layers as well. I think we're going to really try to talk about how all of the features work together, kind of like the intersection of models, LoRAs, control layers, and how all of these things can work. So I brought this in as an initial image, right? What I want to do though, is I want to selectively target one part of this to change its style, okay? And so, people have often asked, how do LoRAs work with regional control? And I think this is going to be an it depends type of answer. When you're applying a LoRA to a model, the model itself is having its weights changed. You're injecting that directly into the weights of the model, which means it is a global change to the model. However, when you have targeted concepts in a LoRA, so if you have a specific style that has been trained into a LoRA, that is going to be associated with a specific token. And so only that token will trigger those new weights, right? It's effectively very isolated changes. So in this case, I'm going to use our pixel art. Actually, maybe I'll turn this off first, so we'll see what it looks like. I'm going to use the pixel art concept model and inject that in, but I'm going to go to our canvas here, and I'm going to do a regional prompt, and I'm going to say pixel art pickup truck. And we're going to make this red so we can see where I'm painting here. And I'm just going to paint that pickup truck. Paint the pickup truck. And this is activating the pixel art tokens for this kind of like region here. Now we will notice that it'll kind of affect the other parts of the image as well. I'm going to turn off auto negative just to try this out for now. So first things first, I'm doing this without the LoRA. So I'm just seeing what activating those tokens looks like in the base model, right? We're going to see what that looks like and see how effective it is. And then I'm going to generate another one with the LoRA turned on. Yeah, this one didn't really do a whole lot without the LoRA, right? So I'll turn off the display preview. So this is without the LoRA. This is base model using pixel art to activate that region. Now we are adding the LoRA in. Let's see if this works. We may have to up the pixel art concept here. So we're getting some pixelation, right? I'm going to open this up so we can see it. So it's kind of turning it almost like into Legos, right? But it's activating that just for that region. So we're kind of injecting that in. We're going to up pixel art. This is the trigger word for this LoRA. We're going to do pixel art pickup truck. And now we're going to regenerate. So what we're getting is it's kind of like injecting that concept into just that one region. And I'll say that it obviously is going to have a much better effect if the styles are aligned with the global image. So if we did a painting of a dog sitting on a pickup truck. Well, let's try this actually. Dog sitting on a pickup truck. Let's try increasing our denoising strength on this just to give it a little bit more flexibility. The increased strength of the LoRA can affect the variation there, but typically I find that's not the best way to kind of get more of it out. In this case, we're increasing our denoising strength significantly, and I think what we're getting is a lot of this kind of like blocky looking kind of vibe. It's not fully pixelated. We could try adding this up here as well. So this is where I'm going to do a painting of a dog sitting on a pickup truck, and that'll kind of push this more into the illustration domain, which is where pixel art is. This kind of goes back to that the global coherence and the local coherence kind of need to map. When we have made this a painting, the pickup truck gets a lot more of the kind of blocky looking vibe, right? So we've got painting everyone else. If someone asks, why is the dog sliding down? I would say it's probably just because dog sitting on a pickup truck is a strange concept in general. We could do a control LoRa or a control adapter if we wanted to kind of select that vibe or fix the location. Maybe that's what we want to do because I think people probably want to see what this looks like. So we'll do control adapter. We'll take our initial image here, kind of bring that in as a canny. And then we are going to kind of fix that so that it keeps the dog where he's supposed to be. And then we'll generate away. Yes, the dog got more pixelated because it slid down into the pixels. So we're going to kind of control for that and isolate the style and isolate the region here. What I'm also going to do is I'm going to try adding another regional prompt for outside of that selection. Now the control net here is actually pushing this into more of a photorealistic style, I think, because it's kind of controlling for the lines of the car. So we might have to loosen up the weight a little bit. And so we'll loosen up the weight pretty significantly. Bring that down. We're really just trying to get that initial dog sitting up on top. Again, we've kind of talked about this in the last few sessions, but style can kind of bleed through from structure, especially like a photorealistic type of image with the control nets will have a significant impact on what it thinks the style should be. So in this case, we've got a lot more control in place. We have painting around here, but we've got kind of our pixelated pickup truck, this painting of a sad dog sitting on top of the car. We're really kind of like trying to align all of this so that it can really give us what we're looking for. If the control nets aren't bleeding too much of the style through, what you want to do is you want to bring that weight down, right? And that will give it a little bit more looseness while still providing some structural placement. So it's not going to infer from the structure what the style is. This particular canny, because it has so much kind of structural detail in it, that just kind of implies to the model that it is a photorealistic image, right? Just because it's like, well, that's the only time I've ever seen that much detail is when it's so like realistic it looks like a car. And we're trying to make that pixelated, so that's where that style bleeds through. When we brought that down and loosened it up, we got a lot more of this pixelation. We can go in and change the painting style of the regions outside of that. Let me move the control adapter to the back. Actually, piece here. We're going to add a layer, and this is going to be this kind of like orangish layer here. Catch the dog in that. That, oops, I zoomed out. Those there, we'll get those there. It's not here. Maybe we'll just catch this background. And does anyone have a style they want to try to jam in? I think it's going to be the danger of audience feedback. If we put in a style that doesn't match the rest of what our global prompt has, we might get some like inconsistencies, and it's going to try to figure out how to bring these two together in a meaningful way. So how about this? We'll try bold, ink, and watercolor, right? We'll try this kind of watercolor background with a pixelated upfront truck. And I did turn auto negative off, which somebody kind of called out. We're going to try to make this kind of a little bit more ink watercolor background and see if we can still maintain our pixelated car. See, we've got these two things fighting each other now. Let's see. Let's do this. Let's delete that. Just confirm that we didn't change anything else. Okay, yeah. So that is, you can see the pixelated style worked there, but when we added in this other region, watercolor. Not only did the bold ink and watercolor not really change too much style, it's a little bit kind of deleted our pixel effect. Pixel art. Yeah, so the pixel art LoRA is applying globally to the weights, but it is not applying globally based on the terminology that we're using. The reason why, this is kind of the point I'm trying to call out here. The pixel art itself is only being invoked using this very specific region, right? Those tokens are only activated on those pixels, right? And that's where this kind of control element is coming from. And this is the main purpose of today's session, is to really kind of explore that piece where a LoRA can be activated regionally. Because that is what questions, you know, come up with regional control or things like that. How do I control or apply a regional LoRA, right? And that's just not the way it works. You can't do a regional LoRA. You can, though, if a LoRA has trigger words, only activate those trigger words on that specific region. And that's kind of what we're trying here. So let's try Baroque painting as our background here. And I'm going to leave the auto negative on there. And I'm going to see what that does for us. Again, as a reminder, we talked about this in past sessions. Auto negative is going to use as a negative prompt this prompt in all of the other regions I haven't painted. And so we'll see if maybe that helps retain some of this pixel art. And explore doing that for both of these. So we're still getting some of this pixelation, but for whatever reason, we're getting into like photo. Maybe that's the trick, is we just need to do like a negative prompt of a photo globally. We're keeping the dog on top of the car with that canny. But what we're trying to do now is really kind of lead these two Baroque concept pickup truck. I mean, this is kind of why I wanted to do this, is because this is a very difficult technique to do two different styles. And I think we're finding it still relatively difficult. I think, you know, it's somewhat pixelated, but I think our best version of this was when it didn't have any other styles it was trying to inject. It was trying to just reconcile pixel art with Baroque painting. Let's try this though. I'm curious to see if we do like a Baroque painting the dog sitting on a pixel art pickup truck. And we're gonna try to add this to the global prompt and see if that kind of like changes anything here. Because now we're using pixel art up in the actual global prompt, which may help us a little bit more. It does seem like that actually works out really well. Okay, I think that's actually probably the thing to do there. So what we've done, just kind of walk through, we kind of were fighting, you know, reconciling this like very specific regional guidance with a broader global prompt that was less specific on the style. So what I went ahead and did was I put our styles in the global prompt, and that's going to give it a lot more juice, right? It's adding that to the global prompt, so it has a lot more space to run with those concepts. And what we're then doing is using the regional guidance to just control where those concepts are. So it's pulling out this Baroque painting of a dog sitting on a pixel art pickup truck, but it's got the place where those concepts go, right? Our pixel art pickup truck is there and our dog is sitting on top. So now we've got our Baroque painting. This dog looks kind of like that skeptical meme dog, which is fun. But we've got like our pixel art truck, and now those two go really well together. So you kind of see the idea here of how this is working. I would say some things to note, right? We're getting this color from our global initial image, right? We could turn that initial image off and just use our canny to get our structure, and we can try that to see what colors it would come up with if we didn't have the initial image. And then what I'm going to do, I'm going to show you something that won't work. We'll take out our canny control and just use this kind of like regional information, because the regional information is going to be insufficient. Truly insufficient. Now, look, this dog lost a lot of his shape. Yeah, I think if you look at this, I would agree that we are seeing some amount. So sorry, I'm going to read the chat to the people who are watching this after the fact. Somebody said, the pixel art LoRA that I experimented with influenced the entire image, even if it was part of a region where the trigger word wasn't active. I think we're seeing that a little here. And the answer is yes, it does, because you're ultimately using the weights that have been modified by the LoRA, right? So LoRAs are not applied regionally. We're not taking the weights and applying that LoRA to one region. We are applying the overall LoRA to the weights itself for the entire image. But we're trying to activate those terms in a regional sense. Now, what that means is if there is in the LoRA itself, like in the applied LoRA, some amount of conceptual bleed, if it's not purely isolated to those trigger words, if there's been an influence elsewhere, which does happen with LoRAs, you're going to see that kind of affect the entire image. And the image itself is going to try to reconcile a little bit how it should look overall, right? Like it's not going to necessarily have a whole lot of information or practice doing this split, if you will. So that's a good call out, and I think this is more of like an experimental technique maybe than something that is purely useful. Like I don't know that it's very often that you're going to be trying to mix completely disparate styles. This is more of kind of like a for demonstration purposes, showing how you might inject regional control for LoRAs, because LoRAs are this kind of global concept to the weights, but we're trying to kind of like isolate those. So you can imagine, for example, if you had two character LoRAs and you wanted to isolate character A and character B, that would be one way to help with that, so that there isn't bleed between the characters and you can kind of like put those where they should go. That's more of the use case here, and something that you can play around with. Someone said, I really think it's important people who are training LoRAs use trigger words as part of their LoRA to support regional prompting. I would typically agree that you're going to get better LoRAs when you have trigger words, or they're more effective and useful LoRAs when you have trigger words rather than these like general concepts. And that's for a couple of reasons. But when you use a LoRA, part of the benefit of it is that it can compound or composite with other LoRAs. You can have multiple LoRAs active at one time. But if you are not using a trigger word, that compositing capability kind of breaks down, because you're not really able to isolate the individual weights. It's kind of like jamming it all together, and you can end up with some kind of like mush type stuff. Someone asked, how do you keep up with what the trigger words are? In your model manager, you can, on an individual model basis, edit the model to have the prompt triggers. And when you're editing a prompt, you can use the prompt trigger button, which will open up all of your current embeddings that are compatible with that model that you have selected. It'll also pull up any active models trigger words. You do have to go in and make sure that you have the trigger words captured when you put those in your model manager for the first time. And I think that this is probably something that if someone said, can we go through that and do a tutorial? I would recommend watching the video that we put on YouTube on how to do that if you're looking for how to do that. And the main reason for that is it's going to be a little bit of a different process if you're using our commercial product versus the community edition. There's two different interfaces for model management. And so I don't want to kind of confuse people by going through one or the other. There's kind of two different processes depending on how you're managing models. But you can do that directly from wherever you are managing models for your application, whether that's in the community edition, which is going to be in your model manager on the left-hand side, or on the professional edition, you can go to your account settings as an account owner or admin, manage all of the models there, and manage the trigger words for everything. That's also where you're going to modify settings for those models, if it's kind of the general purpose model. But I think that we've gone, so someone asked a question, are there any plans for an offline professional edition? It's a good question. The answer is probably not, although we've had some conversations with some larger enterprise customers. The main reason is the professional edition has features and capabilities that are really relevant for businesses running it. So an example being model security. If you think about the size of these models, concept models less than a gigabyte, a pure like base model is anywhere from like 2 to 6 gigabytes, depending on, I mean, it could be more if you do one of those big mergers, but it's the average size, right? So these are small files. If you're distributing lots of those around a company, you're actually potentially putting your IP at risk because the models won't be secured. You're kind of making a bunch of copies and they could get out. And so that's one of the reasons why enterprises look for a hosted one. But the other functional reason or just practical purposes is just the ease with which you can use this in a hosted product. So getting back to the studio session, I do appreciate the questions. Thank you all. Someone asked, what do you think about using depth versus canny for the basic, this is what I want ControlNet in a case like this? Let's try it. I anticipate that depth is not going to work very well, but I don't know that that's true. I'm just guessing. So we've got our, let's do this. Let's got our regional guidance. Just gonna peek under here real quick. That all looks fine. Broke painting looks fine. The dog's there. It's just not super visible. We're gonna try that. I tend to find that the depth models don't really work for like flat 2D art as well. Kind of like you're asking for 3D, but then forcing a 2D concept in. Wow, that is strange, truly bizarre background. Why? It's a great question. It's definitely bled our pixel art out quite a bit here. Yeah, that is real bizarre. Let's take out pixel art up here and just do a painting of a dog sitting on a pickup truck. I just want to see if maybe that's where the pixel art is bleeding through, is like up here in the control or the global prompt. It's real interesting. Okay, so for whatever reason, this depth model has this kind of like psychedelic coloring that is pulling through. Uh, Not really a Baroque painting. It's kind of bleeding through this illustrative style, maybe. Uh, did fix the rear legs. This part's pixelated everywhere. The pixel art, I would say it's still maintaining some of the pixel art. Um, Somebody said, yeah, I think it's because it has a huge flat background rather than having any depth at all for the mountains. I think that's right. And this kind of goes back to what I was saying is using depth for a 2D representation or 2D image like a painting. It's just tough. It's tough. Um, the pixel art's localized. Our painting, maybe we'll do Baroque painting of mountains, vista, uh, sunset. We'll kind of like try to give it some more information of what's there because it didn't pick up anything from the depth control net. So it kind of just gave us this like squiggly cosmic star type thing. Okay, so our Baroque painting of mountains, vista, sunset looks like the car is going to be in front of a mural. And this goes back to the or I don't know, maybe it's a frame. It's a framed photo. It still maintains our pixel art. We do have a painting in the background now. Our dog is amusing. Yeah, it's still got some pretty funky coloring, which is particularly interesting to see how that's changed pretty dramatically. What we could do is let's do our image to image here of this initial dog that we saw. That's the back. We'll change our denoising strength pretty high. So we're kind of doing our depth. We're pulling that in. We'll see what that gets us, because that's going to drive a little bit of a nudge on the coloring. We'll get our yellow car back. And it'll be interesting to see how that interprets everything, because it could be that these concepts are all going to bleed together. Okay, we still got our pixel car. I would say this doesn't look so much like a painting because it's inferred a lot of things from the color of this, which is it's pushing it back into this kind of photographic space. Pixel car on realistic ground is quite interesting. I agree. I find this very interesting. Someone said, would a style IP adapter be better for getting the style of something in an area versus LoRA? It certainly could be. I think you'd probably find that. Okay, this is good. This is a good question. I'm going to give you 5 gold stars. We're going to start a gold star system for today's session. You get 5 gold stars for that question. It's a good one because I think it brings up an interesting piece. So when you're using IP adapter, it is taking the image and kind of like finding the embedding that represents that image in the text encoder. So it's looking at that and kind of trying to find the right way to articulate to the model what it's seeing. If you have altered its understanding of like pixel art, for example, but you're using the same tokens, it's the kind of the same space, right? That could be a good way to activate the style LoRA that you've brought in. But if they're completely different, if you've kind of like really pushed it far outside, that IP adapter may not necessarily work the same way as you'd expect. The IP adapters are not tuned to the models, right? And that's, I think, a long-term area of exploration to make these tools work really well together, is to have your IP adapter be able to speak the same language as the underlying model. Because right now they're mostly on the same wavelength, but this is a great reason for why people have commonly brought up. There's a popular model that is for like more artistic styles called Pony, and people have noted that IP adapter doesn't work well for that model. Why? Well, because it's not speaking the same language at all, right? That model is a wildly different, it's speaking a very different language. It's been strongly fine-tuned away from understanding the same words. And so even when you're looking at a picture, it's using the original SDXL language to describe those things. And so you almost need to tune an IP adapter for that model. You're similarly going to see, somebody else called out, unexpected results when you use other models that aren't really widely supported. They're not popular. Some would argue that they're like, oh, why would you use them? Like Playground, I think is a good example. It's not derived from SDXL. It's got the same architecture, so you can slot it in and use it with a tool like Invoke, but you would also need all of the supporting models that would be tuned for that. And that is truly, I think, kind of the big area of research that we're looking at right now at Invoke, is how to build a composable ecosystem, because that's what's missing right now. Is we've got all of these fractured parts and pieces that can be independently fine-tuned but don't have a cohesive way to be brought together. So thank you for that question. It was a good one. The IP adapters and the models that exist right now that are widely used, they're all based on the base SDXL foundational model, so that the features will just not work if you've got a model that's way, way different and understands things differently. So great question. In this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to increase our denoising strength. We're going to lose a little bit of the structure here, but I'm going to see if we can get this Baroque painting back. At 0.97, it's not going to be a lot like our existing image. It's just going to be nudging it in the right direction. But I think we might be able to get some more of that painting back. And I'm gonna call this. I don't know if I'm gonna call this a success. It went in the right direction. It's much better, right? Baroque painting is interesting. I don't know that my interpretation of Baroque painting would look a bit different. But all that said, I think we are getting this kind of composable concept down. Does everybody feel like they have a good grasp on that? Are there any more questions? Yeah, someone's calling out. It's definitely oil painting in the background, not really Baroque style, and still has sunset colors. The sunset is because it's sunset. I put sunset there. So if we did, night. No, if I did night sky, it won't work very well. If I just take sunset out, it won't necessarily have those colors. It might still have the wild colors that were coming from the depth model. A lot of this is like downstream of this depth piece. It is interesting. But now we're going to kind of like go into a different coloring realm where it's just mountains and a valley, which looks okay. It's all good. Someone said it looks more like painted glass. Yeah, this one definitely seems like more like a painting, but I agree it's still not Baroque. And this could be where we use a custom Baroque model, right? And then we have the Baroque concept more effectively captured. Which we have a data set that we put up for Baroque art. So if you're interested in training a Baroque model, that's probably a good place to start. The Baroque model can be trained using the Invoke training scripts, or if you're a professional user, we've got the training app. You can use that data set as well, and you can train the Baroque style. All of that is up on Hugging Face. Cool. So now I'm going to open up the floor again for another suggestion. Now that you kind of have this idea of what we can do here, and it's always dangerous to ask for audience suggestions and challenges here, but does anybody have any ideas of what they'd like to try to composite together? So this is, really throw out a challenge and we'll see what we can do. We can use LoRAs and kind of poke around with that. We'll take a look at a couple of these. We've got photography. We've got some kind of like artistic ones. Hand Sketcher, I think, is like a architectural sketch. Hypersynth is going to be a little bit more like digital action art. oil painting is going to be oil. Well, oil painting would be interesting to play around with this one. Let's try this real quick. Let's do oil painting, and then let's do oil painting of mountains vista. Let's just try that. So now we're using the pixel art and the oil painting, and that'll definitely give us something a little bit different. You know, whether it's going to be ideal or not, and whether we retain our pixel structure, we will find out. Someone asked if the 3 pluses in the regional prompt here that is upweighting the pixel art concept could affect the style. It could, as a matter of fact, it could. Maybe we should turn off these auto negatives and see what we get. It's very crude oil painting. So when we turn off the auto negative, someone made a good call there. Someone made a good call because we're wanting to see this. I think the oil painting definitely looks better without that. Depth control net still not doing us any favors with the background. That's true. Let's try this with a canny, because I think that depth is what's making this background so flat. This goes back to, again, the information that we're telling the generation is that there is no depth there. There's no depth, because if there were depth, it would pop, but we're telling it there's no depth, and that is different, right? With a canny, we're telling it where edges are, and that's a little bit of a different type of instruction. I think what we'll find is that this ends up producing better results for the background. I think we'll see that. I think we're seeing it right there. Yeah, this looks like a much better oil painting on the background. Let's try switching back auto negative on. That pixel art plus is now being applied as a negative to all of the Baroque or the oil painting areas. It's just like someone said, that's a super strong negative prompt. So it could deteriorate the quality of the background. Someone said, can you depth control net plus canny at the same time to split the difference? It's not going to split the difference. It's going to add both of those together. Yeah, so in this case, auto negative here is not helping us because it's actually deteriorating the quality of the background. And so we're going to turn auto negative off. And that just gives us kind of this flat positive affect. And I think we're still looking for some feedback on auto negative and whether people want that on by default, off by default as a setting kind of thing. So if you experiment with auto negative, please give us feedback. Oh yeah, this is the same photo. Okay. Yeah, we did that already. Let's try taking down. Actually, no. We're gonna move on. We're gonna move on from this. Someone said maybe someone looking at a painting in a museum is a different challenge. I think that's an interesting concept. So let's do a photo of a person looking at a painting of a trying to think of a concept of something that would be kind of strange. Maybe we've got a LoRA for something that would be interesting. Take out our pixel art. We'll just try it with oil painting. So we'll do a photo of a person looking at a painting of a rocket ship, Cosmos Galaxy. I'm going to take off all of our control layers. I'm just going to generate this, right? So we have to take this out of the negative I'm going to generate this just so that I can understand what the seed has for us. So we've got a person standing looking at our kind of like painting, right? She's in a museum, she's looking at this thing. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use the initial image. I'm not going to use it to guide the actual generation, but I'm going to use it because the seed is fixed. This is structurally kind of what this seed is evoking with this prompt. And so I'm just using this as a guide almost for the seed itself. But I'm going to do oil painting here. Actually, you know, the easiest way for this, just do the whole thing real quick, dirty, and then we erase our person here. And we'll call this oil painting. We'll take that out. We'll see if that works for us. Now, this is kind of loose a little bit, right? Because we're actually going to change some of the content. Certainly possible that the composition would get moved around. Some colors did change, even though we're on the same seed. But I think overall, we're still getting a lot of what we wanted. Kind of leaning in to see if that looks like an oil painting or not. We don't have our oil painting LoRA on, so let's turn on the oil painting. A good A/B test anyways. So now we're actually pulling out the actual oil painting concept from the concept model. We're injecting it into that spot. And we're going to see, just as a big oil painting. Really wanted to make that wider, which is okay. It's still following our rules. I would say that looks a lot more like an oil painting. We still have our person here, photorealistic, looking at this oil painting, this rocket ship oil painting, and looking at the details. If we zoom in, I think there's definitely a lot of this here that is on point. We're getting what we wanted. We didn't control structure through anything but the seed, right? Seed's kind of controlling most of that structure. It's also why this room changed quite a bit. So if we brought this back in and brought this in as an initial image, I'm also going to change this to a random seed. Turn this up 0.85. Might be too high. No, it's good enough. It's perfect. So now we've got a little bit closer to that original thing that we painted over. Oil painting, lady standing there watching it, you know, in a museum gallery, right? Now, just out of curiosity, right? If we take this out and just do this without regional control, or the initial image, we're going to see what that kind of looks like. The question really here is like, do we need the regional control, or is this just kind of like doing the same thing? I would say in this case, it's kind of doing the same thing, right? It did pretty well without it. We're not getting a whole lot of like benefit from the regional control. We don't really need the regional control, I guess, is the thing I'm trying to get at. But if we wanted to like play around a little bit, we might try oil and pixel art in the same region. Is that crazy talk? It's crazy talk. So we're going to do regional guidance. We're going to do the same thing here. We'll do this big region. Base part there. And then we'll add another one and we'll do the same thing. All right. right, we're going to do pixel art. And we're going to do oil painting. Auto negative is fine, I think. Those parts. Okay. Although the edges might get some weirdness. And then we're going to take out oil painting from the overall. Painting might push it away from pixel art, but now we're going to see if we can like really fuse this together. It's kind of experimental. I think we're seeing some things. I'm seeing some stuff in the noise here that suggests we might be getting both of it. Definitely kind of like there's some oil art pieces, there's some pixel art pieces. We'll do this. We'll take pixel art down a little bit. Kind of a lot of it. That's two minuses, so it might look a lot more like an oil painting. What we could also do, just thinking out loud here. Yeah, it's definitely less pixel arty. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to erase this part here, right? So I'm going to have kind of like the bottom be pixely, but the top is not. You can see how that looks. Both of these, again, pixel art's pulling from the pixel art LoRA concept model, and then the oil painting is pulling from that one. So we've got pixel art on the bottom and oil painting up at the top. Let's see if this is like a strict. Yeah, so we've got like this regional pixel art down below. We've got our oil painting up in the sky. We're going from the old world to the new oil painting world, and now we've got this like woman in the real world looking at this art, right? So it's pretty neat, right? We're able to kind of control where those models are applied. Now let's see what this would do if we didn't have regional control. An oil painting mixed with pixel art of a rocket ship, right? Now, without this articulation of where it is and what it is and how that composes together, we're kind of just like, hey, throw these concepts together and see what you think they mean, right? And it could end up being pretty cool, but it's going to be a lot less like controlled, right? Yeah, so this one kind of mixed it together. It's not really like, it's just jamming it together, almost like when we did Zero. Someone said we lost the stream. We're gonna try. At least we didn't shut down. Okay, it's better than it's happened in past sessions. We're gonna restart the stream real quick. I think this is it. Give me a thumbs up. We're good. Got it back. This is oil painting mixed with pixel art. So it looks very similar, or at least like conceptually similar to when we just jammed them together in the same regions without any type of regional control, right? The regional control is really what gave us this effect. So this is where regional control actually has influences, when we're really trying to articulate specific regions that would not be well understood by the model otherwise. I think this is like a particularly good example of this, because we're still mixing it together down here, but it's coming out and is isolated to just oil painting up top. And the beauty of how this works is, as I've mentioned before, part of the reason why there can be this game of trying to like get the regions to map to the overall global prompt and kind of get everything to jive with the regions you want is because we have optimized for global coherence. So it's always going to try to reconcile and create a global image that makes sense, which means that in this case, you look at the edges of the pixel art region, and there's a nice blending of the concepts, even though it's not an exact line. So if we were to, let's go back and mix this so we get those layers back. If we were to take this image out and add in our pixelated version just for reference, right? You can see that there's like this line where it's still, you know, it's not making pixel art right here. So if you look at the pixel art line, this isn't pixelated right there, the bottom of the planet. It's not like there's this weird line there. It's oil painting, right? But it's because it knew when in the image to start blending in the concept of the oil painting because it's optimizing for global coherence. That's why it does what it does. So it ends up making it a little bit less reliable of there must always be this thing here from a regional control perspective, but it gives the output image a much higher feeling for quality because we can make it globally consistent always. So in this case, it really helps blend these two concepts together. Hopefully that makes sense. So we've got 6 minutes left, which is not enough time for any more fun compositions, but I will happily answer any questions that people have if there are any other questions that haven't been addressed. Again, today's session has been focused primarily on understanding the relationship between LoRAs and regions and the relationship between the global prompt and the regions, ControlNets. We're kind of mixing all of the tools in. We didn't do as much IP adapter today, but we talked a little bit about that. Although it would work very similarly in the sense that you could inject regional IP adapter information. So I'll leave the chat open for another minute to see if there's any other questions that come in. But I'm not seeing people type, so I think we might be at the end of our road together today. Scan back through to see if I missed any questions. I think I answered all of them on the way through. Yep, that's it. Awesome. All right, well, everyone, we'll see you at the next session. This will be posted on YouTube. I have made the commitment that it will get up. So don't worry, you can share it afterwards and follow back up if there were anything that you wanted to kind of repeat over. It'll be posted sometime early next week. All right, so take care, everybody. We'll see you soon. Bye.